I'll never forget the shocked expression on Karen's face when the handcuffs snapped shut on her wrists, but I'm getting ahead of the story. It all began on a flawless Sunday morning. I had just stepped outside to admire my Corvette, freshly, waxed and shining like a gem after 3 hours of meticulous detailing. As I stood there soaking in the view of my cherry-red pride and joy, I noticed Karen storming across the street. Arms folded and face locked in that familiar scowl she was known for in the neighborhood, she marched right up and blocked my view. "Excuse me," she barked, planting herself between me and the car. "I need the keys to that vehicle. Now." Her voice was laced with the kind of entitlement that made you do a double take. I looked at her, baffled. Was this real? "Karen, what are you talking about?" I asked, keeping my tone even. "This is my car." With a defiant tilt of her chin, she glared at me. "That's not your Corvette," she snapped. "It belonged to my brother. I don't know how you ended up with it, but if you don't hand over the keys right now, I'm calling the police." She extended her hand like she expected compliance. And sure enough, the cops did show up within the hour. But it wasn't me they were there for. I had only been living in Oakwood Estates for 3 months. After years of grinding and saving, I had finally bought my dream home in what was meant to be a serene high-end neighborhood. Sitting proudly in my driveway was my cherry-red Corvette Stingray, the fulfillment of a promise I'd made to myself as a teenager flipping through glossy car magazines. What I didn't expect was how quickly it would attract the wrong kind of attention, particularly from Karen Westfield, president of the HOA, who seemed personally offended by the car's presence. From the moment I moved in, Karen made her disdain clear. At first it was subtle, neatly written notices referencing aesthetic guidelines, then passive-aggressive remarks delivered with a syrupy smile. "That color really draws attention, don't you think?" she'd ask, her grin never quite reaching. Her eyes. "Most of us here prefer more understated vehicles." I'd answer her with a courteous nod, while secretly wondering just how many times I could rev the engine without breaking any actual noise rules. Then the warnings escalated. Bright neon violation slips began appearing under my windshield wipers, citing my car's inappropriately flashy appearance and claiming it was disruptive to neighborhood harmony. I reviewed the HOA bylaws in detail. They mentioned parking rules and upkeep, but nothing about vehicle color or type. When I brought this up at the next HOA meeting, Karen brushed me off with a condescending wave. "The board has discretion to interpret the guidelines in the best interest of the community," she said. Things took a real turn when I installed a new exhaust system. It wasn't overly loud. I deliberately picked one that was tame enough to keep the peace, but the richer tone didn't go unnoticed. The next morning, I spotted Karen outside, snapping photos of my car like she was collecting evidence for a trial. When she realized I was watching from the window, she stomped up to my front door and hammered on the bell. "Your car is now in violation of the neighborhood noise ordinance," she announced the moment I answered. "If you don't remove that modification within 48 hours, it will be towed, at your expense." Her face was flushed with self-satisfaction, and it was painfully obvious how much she relished playing the enforcer. "Karen, the exhaust is well within the legal noise limits," I told her evenly. "I made sure to check city ordinances before having it installed." She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping into a more menacing tone. "This isn't about city laws, this is about HOA regulations. And as president, I decide what qualifies as a violation." The implication was clear, but I wasn't about to let her intimidate me. I simply nodded, thanked her for the heads up, and closed the door. That evening, I installed a security camera aimed directly at my driveway, just in case. It turned out to be a smart move. Over the following 2 weeks, Karen ramped up her efforts. She sent out a mass email to the entire neighborhood vaguely condemning certain residents for disturbing the peace with inappropriate vehicles. She even called an emergency HOA meeting, pushing for new aesthetic guidelines clearly aimed at my Corvette. When the board didn't back her proposal, she turned to more desperate measures. One Saturday, I saw her outside with a tape measure, crouched by my car, trying to determine if I was parked too far or too close to the curb. When she noticed me watching, she flashed a smug smile and said, "Just carrying out my duties. Someone has to enforce the standards around here." The next day, I found a notice taped to my front door claiming my car was leaking fluids onto the driveway. It was completely made up. I disproved it immediately by snapping photos of the spotless concrete beneath my car. Then came that infamous Sunday, the moment everything changed. I was outside under the morning sun giving the final buff to my Corvette's freshly waxed hood when Karen stormed across the street. A few neighbors were out walking their dogs or grabbing the paper, and they slowed to watch the scene unfold. Karen marched right up and planted herself in front of my car, arms crossed tightly across her chest, standing like some kind of blockade in heels. "I've had enough of this nonsense," she declared loudly, making sure everyone around could hear. "That's my brother's Corvette, and I want the keys right now." Her voice shook, though there was an undeniable hint of drama in her delivery, making alarm bells go off in my head. I stared at her, completely stunned. "Karen, what are you talking about? I bought this car brand new 3 years ago." "Don't lie to me," she yelled, her voice rising. "This is Robert's car. Same model, same color. He passed away last month and his car went missing from his garage." She pointed directly at the custom license plate frame. "He had that exact same frame. You stole it and I'm going to prove it." By now, a few neighbors had gathered, phones out, clearly recording the spectacle. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. "Karen, I'm sorry about your brother, but this is my car. I have all the paperwork to prove it." I reached for my phone, but before I could grab it, she lunged forward, attempting to snatch the keys from my hand. "Give me those keys," she screamed, her face twisted in fury. "That car belongs to my family." I stepped back, holding the keys out of her reach, which only seemed to fuel her anger. "You're a thief, a criminal who moved into our neighborhood thinking nobody would notice," she spat. "I'm calling the police," I said firmly, keeping my distance. "This has gone too far." Her expression shifted from rage to smug satisfaction. "I already did," she smirked. "I called 911 before I came over here. I reported, 'A grand theft auto in progress. They'll be here any minute to arrest you and impound my car.'" As if on cue, the sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, steadily growing louder. 2 patrol cars pulled up to the curb, and 3 officers approached cautiously, clearly baffled by what they were walking into. Without missing a beat, Karen rushed toward them, pointing at me and my Corvette. "That's him, officers, that's the man who stole my brother's car," Karen cried out, suddenly bursting into tears. "I have the spare key at home and all the paperwork. He must have hotwired it somehow." The lead officer, a woman who carried herself with calm professionalism, asked both of us to stay apart while they sorted things out. "Sir, can you provide proof of ownership for this vehicle?" she asked me. "Absolutely," I said, unlocking my phone and opening the app for my digital glove box. "I have photos of the title, registration, insurance cards, and the original purchase agreement from the dealership." I handed her my phone, showing the documents with my name clearly displayed. "I also have the physical copies inside if you'd like to see them." The officer reviewed the digital documents before asking for the physical copies, which I fetched from inside the house along with the original sales contract from the dealership. Meanwhile, Karen was growing more frantic. "Those documents are obviously fake," she yelled, her voice rising with hysteria. "He probably photoshopped his name onto my brother's paperwork. Check the VIN number. It will match my brother's car." The officers checked the VIN number against their database, and as expected, it confirmed everything I had been saying. The car was legally registered to me and had been for 3 years. "Ma'am, can you provide any documentation showing your brother owned this car?" one of the officers asked Karen. Her confident demeanor wavered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "I don't have them with me right now," she said quickly. "But if you come to my house, I can show you photos of Robert with the car. It's identical. Same color, same model, same everything." The officer exchanged glances with her colleagues before responding. "Ma'am, even if your brother owned a car that looked similar, that doesn't mean this specific vehicle belonged to him. All the documentation here shows that this car belongs to this gentleman." Karen's face turned bright red. "You're not listening to me," she screamed. "He's manipulated the paperwork somehow. That's my brother's car and I want him arrested for theft." Without warning, she lunged at me again, trying to grab the keys from my pocket. The officers reacted quickly, pulling Karen away from me. "Ma'am, you need to calm down," the lead officer said firmly, but Karen was beyond reasoning. "You're all incompetent," she screamed, fighting against the officer's hold. "That's my car, Robert's car. I'm the president of the HOA, and I demand you do your job." In a last desperate attempt, she broke free and reached for my keys, managing to catch the edge of my pocket and tear it. That was the last straw. The officers swiftly restrained her, and despite her continued struggles, they placed her in handcuffs. "Karen Westfield, you're under arrest for filing a false police report, attempted theft and assault," the leady officer said calmly, reading her rights. The look on Karen's face was unforgettable. Her eyes widened in complete disbelief, as if she couldn't fathom that she was the one being arrested. "This is outrageous," she sputtered as they led her toward the patrol car. "Do you know who I am? I'm the president of Oakwood Estates HOA. You can't arrest me for protecting my property. Later that day, I learned from neighbors that Karen had been formally charged with filing a false police report, attempted theft, and assault. The evidence against her was undeniable, especially with several witnesses and video recordings of her trying to steal my keys. Even more revealing was the discovery that Karen didn't even have a brother named Robert. Everything about that story was a complete lie. The judge set her bail at $25,000 and issued a restraining order, keeping her at least 100 feet away from me or my property. The consequences for Karen came quickly and harshly. She was removed from her position as HOA president after an emergency vote by the board, and her employer, a reputable local real estate agency, placed her on unpaid leave until her case was resolved. When the story made the local news, complete with footage of her shouting, "That's my Corvette," as she was escorted into a police car, her professional reputation was effectively shattered. The final blow came at her sentencing 3 months later. Despite hiring a pricey attorney who argued that she had been experiencing emotional distress, the judge showed no mercy. Karen was sentenced to 6 months in county jail, 2 years of probation, and a $5,000 fine plus court fees. As the bailiff led her away, her face was a mask of stunned disbelief, the weight of her actions and the consequences finally sinking in.